Talent is a productively tangible commodity which is distributed differently to all of us in diverse formats. How we choose to implement and utilize such gifts is up to all of us on an individual basis. But here's the thing, in order to move our progress ecosystem forward, the worst thing you can do is refuse to use your talent which you've been afforded. Because after all, one of the saddest things in life is wasted talent. We'll revisit that notion in just a moment, but first, I wanted to bring your attention to a global survey conducted by LinkedIn in March of this year, which revealed that 74% of employees say that they are not reaching their fullest potential at work due to several factors, including a lack of motivation and interest in the job and the repetitive nature of their everyday at work. So what's the key to turning the ignition on the interest at work and engaging people from a business, entrepreneurial, and production standpoint? For some comprehensively interesting answers, I turn to my friend, Zachary Parker Harris, who's worked in a variety of different entrepreneurial settings for more than a decade now. He's an international traveler, and he's worked for one of his dream technological companies when he was first starting out, when he landed his dream job, which propelled him to ask questions, become curious, and develop a passion for the mastermind side of business. During the quest of asking the questions to the executives in his dream job, Parker Harris really began to realize that professionally he had to go for a higher calling and a different path. He started a mastermind which he modeled after Benjamin Franklin, which over time became his business and his mission. He now leads Gentle Global, which has served thousands of entrepreneurs in their mission to connect with like-minded peers and build the relationships and health in their business, which they deeply desire. And he joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to learn about your exhilarating life, my friend, because you've lived quite the exhilarating chapter of a life. So it's great to see you today, and thank you for your international connection this morning. It's most appreciated.
Again, my pleasure.
Absolutely. So, Parker, I know you started your career landing your dream job with a Fortune 100 technology company. So I'm wondering how that propels you forward into what you're doing now and what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting question. I always love to add value to other people, and that came in a variety of different places. And I think, having an amazing opportunity working for that type of company, um, gave me the opportunity to do that for the rest of my career and like work within corporate finance, work within, large technology companies. And through some conversations that I had with people that had positions that I'd want to have in the future, it helped me realize that that wasn't my path, and started giving me the hints of where my path might be.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said something interesting in your first answer, and I wanted to circle back to it, and that was about adding value to other people. So how do you define adding value to others?
Solving a pain for someone, it's an interesting question. How to add value? I think it can be giving them time back, solving a pain that they might have, giving them opportunities that they might not otherwise have. Um, yeah, that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, and tell me, in terms of adding value to other people, what brings you the most happiness or the widest smile when you're able to add value? So, what brings you the widest smile in that context?
I like to support people with breakthroughs where their business and their professional life impacts their personal life. So their health, their relationships. Um, that's what really turns me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Parker, I know that you're very, you had some mentors along the way that played a very integral role in your development from a personal and I'm sure a professional standpoint as well. So tell me about the role of mentors in your life and why do you think that's so important?
Yeah, I mean, I think some people are born into families where they get the guidance or the connections that they're looking for. I was not born into that environment, and so I realized that I wanted to understand what thriving was and what success looked like, and I was able to attract mentors, or at least find mentors that could give me hints and give me counsel to support my evolution and the next steps in the journey.
And tell me, what is or who have been some of your most impactful mentors today?
Yeah, I've had at a certain point in my life, I was always looking for mentors. I'm at a point now where I'm more looking for the answers inside of myself. But the first few mentors I had really helped me to um, make better decisions in terms of how I was showing up in the world. Simple things, right? Pulling my pants up, taking my sunglasses and hats off inside, learning to be less argumentative, not looking to um, create negativity amongst because of disagreements were some of like the most impactful things that I learned early on. And it was through nonprofit programs that I participated in where I located those mentors. And then in university, I was involved in an entrepreneurship fellowship program where we were connected to a mentor, and then different mentors were also brought in to speak to us. And that was also really pivotal for me.
Yeah, Parker, I'm fascinated to ask you this next question in terms of your business development because I'm curious to ask you about what do you think it means to be a sponge of knowledge in business, and I'll qualify that question this way because Parker, a lot of people when they start out in business, they're very protective or territorial over their business idea because they want to think that they know everything. But tell me about the importance of really being a sponge in business and soaking up as much knowledge from others as possible. How important do you think that is?
Yeah, I think that resonates with me about like wanting to be perceived as knowing everything, and I think that's such a weakness versus um, learning to listen, learning to ask questions, and maybe figure out what we don't know, the unknown, or what it is that we maybe think that we know that isn't true. Um, that unlocked a lot of growth for me. I think when I hear like being a sponge, it makes me think of like consuming content, reading, reading books, and learning that way. But I think I've gotten more breakthroughs from really learning to hear what I think myself and like be in tune with the customer or the person that I'm adding value to and have uncomfortable conversations, ask questions, and really listen without being without like wanting to hear a certain thing, but being surprised by what I heard.
Yeah, and let's dive into the concept of being a business mastermind because I know that that's something you talk a lot about, and I know that you have your own definition of that term. So, what does it mean to you to be a mastermind in business, and how have you put your own spin on that concept as well?
Well, I define a mastermind, and this is a definition that I learned from Napoleon Hill, is two or more minds coming together in the spirit of harmony to accomplish a common goal. So I think if there's a really strong company culture, a mastermind can be created within the team. And I also see that entrepreneurs, because of complex stakeholder relationships, value from having a mastermind of other people that really understand what they're going through and can have their best interests in mind and challenge them around, different ideas and support them around challenges that come up as well as processing opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Parker, I know that you've been an entrepreneur now for just over a decade, and I'm curious to ask you, how do you think business has become more inclusive and diverse?
I think that if there, whenever there's a desire to add value to other people, there's unlimited opportunity. And I think, you know, I don't think that that's ever changed in a lot of ways. Like, I look back at George Washington Carver, who is a famous inventor and business person, solved a really big problem. Um, and that was at the time, it was, what do we do with peanuts? Because peanuts helped restore the soil where nutrients were taken out from like cotton farming. So I think that, at a certain level in business, there, you know, a lot of the judgments that maybe happen in a more like scarcity environment or victim environment, don't happen in a business environment where people are really seeking to add value to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Parker, I'm also curious to ask you about developing business patterns and what you've seen in the field of entrepreneurship in terms of business patterns that work or that need to be tweaked in order to work. So, what are your thoughts on emerging business patterns?
One pattern I've seen is a lot of times an entrepreneur or a leader will think that there's some sort of strategic or tactical problem in their business when usually it's something deeper, usually a mindset issue or like a personal development issue, a limiting belief, a lack of clear vision. So that's one pattern that I see. Um, I also have benefited both business wise and personal wise with gathering data and using data to make decisions. And I think that, more and more data and data scientists and that, business intelligence, that's becoming like a pattern that is continuing to emerge. And I think back on the personal development side of things, there's a lot more talk around, the story that we tell ourselves, the identity we create as a result of that story, narratives, the value of storytelling. And I think most people, either consciously or unconsciously, are living out a story that they've created at a certain point in their past. And the more that we take ownership of that story, write that story, and live out that story can really impact our success or failure.
Yeah, and Just out of personal curiosity, Parker, I work with a lot of organizations to help them amplify and build an inclusive culture for folks with disabilities because I was born with cerebral palsy, and it's important to me to amplify avenues for individuals with disabilities to enter the workforce. So I'm curious, from a management perspective, since you've run businesses and been an entrepreneur both domestically and internationally, I'm curious to ask you about what do you think the role of a manager has to be when it comes to infusing folks with disabilities into the workforce?
I think I've had good and bad managers, and I've probably been a good and bad manager myself. And I think the more that we seek to empower the people that we work for, and I think a lot of times bosses think people work for them, when in actuality we work for those people. So the more that we empower those people and create an environment to be successful, that's what that's what I would want from a manager. And I think that you know um, someone with potentially with a disability would want that same space.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Parker, I'm curious to dive into the concept of entrepreneurship empowerment and how you really define that term from a macro, granular, and overall space. From a general perspective, how do you define entrepreneurship empowerment?
Entrepreneurship empowerment. I'm not sure I know what that means. um,
Uh,
can you elaborate a little bit?
yeah, so I'll give you some context in terms of really putting entrepreneurs rather, in a place where they feel empowered and where they feel as if they can be a transformational leader within the business and societal world as well. So, under that context, what do you think it means to be empowered as an entrepreneur?
I think entrepreneurs are people that are like usually already feel empowered. And I say this with a little bit of hesitancy, but the more that we get out of their way, or I think that there's probably certain people in government or in civics or in different situations that could support that entrepreneur. And I think in ecosystems where entrepreneurship thrives, that happens. But a lot of times, I think that in environments where maybe where entrepreneurship isn't thriving, the role of other stakeholders, they see it as controlling entrepreneurs or marshaling them or protecting people from the entrepreneur. And I don't think that that serves really anybody in the ecosystem, which I think we're seeing play out more and more on a macro level right now and in different places in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I asked you about management style earlier, but from a general perspective, I'm also curious to ask you, what do you define as elite leadership, both in the workplace and in society as well? So, how do you define elite leadership?
Yeah, my favorite idea around this is essentially leaders and leadership. Like I think a core aspect of leadership is having power. And the way that I define power is the ability to turn intention into reality, turning ideas into reality. So I believe that leaders are people that can turn ideas into reality.
Absolutely. And, Parker, I'm fascinated to get your perspective on the word opportunity in the context of business and in life because I always tell myself that I make time for the things that I prioritize, and I believe that we're all given sort of a deck of cards in life, and we have to sort of stack the deck of cards that were given to uh, in our favor in order to maximize life. So, what do you think about the concept of the word opportunity from a business and life perspective? What does that mean to you?
A broad question. I mean, the first thing that came to mind was the fact that opportunities are usually disguised in hard work, um, in a certain amount of challenges and suffering, in discomfort. So I don't think that usually opportunities are not served up on a silver platter. Although we want maybe sometimes I want them to be. Um, I think the meaning that we assign things makes a huge difference on what happens and the impact that it can have on us. And so even this morning, I woke up to an email that didn't say what I wanted it to say, um, and provided some really raw feedback to me that I see as an opportunity for me to grow and evolve and break through to a different level. And that's because I see myself as a hero of my own journey. The old me with a victim mentality would probably look at that as negative feedback that I need to escape, hide, and numb from.
Well, life is all about growth, isn't it?
For some people.
Well, for sure. And, building on that, I wanted to talk to you about mental models and principles and how they apply to the business world in your perspective.
Yeah, I think accurate thinking is the biggest enemy to evil. I think good investors, the best entrepreneurs see reality in a different way. Um, And for me, the biggest tools to help me think accurately involve principles, things that Ray Dalio did a good job describing in his book Principles. And I think some of the best selling books throughout history are all made up of principles that, if we live by, can really support like a higher quality of life. And if we don't live by, can cause pain, in a lot of different ways. So that's the principle side of it. I think sometimes principles or truths are seemingly contradictory as well. Um, and and those I call paradoxes, or those are called paradoxes. And I think paradoxes are an important part of accurate thinking and also in business that doesn't get enough attention, but I think it's a core aspect of a good leader. Back to leadership is the ability to stand in that paradox and understand how these principles work and why they're conflicting in this situation, and not judge one side versus the other. And as we stack principles on top of each other, we can create mental models or frameworks that, um, I'm thinking of Warren Buffett's business partner, Charlie Munger, wrote a book, Poor Charlie's Almanac, that goes into a lot of different mental models and frameworks. Some of my, I think it's when somebody really spends time studying a problem for, 2, 3 decades, they end up creating a framework or a mental model that answers that question. And those are books like Good to Great, Great by Choice. Stephen Covey's book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, has a very simple mental model in there, circle of influence and circle of concern, and how those stack on top of each other. But I think that they create a geometric growth in understanding and wisdom versus just a simple memorization.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Parker, I'm also curious to ask you about sort of achieving business clarity in business and really getting clear about your message and mission when you start or run a business. So what is your a definition of business clarity?
I think it goes back to solving a pain. For me, I think the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. And so that's the mission that I've chosen. And the positive side of that is like unlocking human potential. But I believe that most entrepreneurs have a seed of inspiration that comes from a specific pain that either they or someone that they care about went through, and they want to make sure that other people don't have to go through that same pain, and that's their mission. And I think that extends to nonprofits. I think that extends to great leaders. um, so yeah, that's what comes up for me.
Yeah, in terms of personal development, uh, as it relates to business success, how do you think those two things are interconnected?
Yeah, like I said, I think a lot of times people think that their business problem or professional problem is a business or professional problem, but it ends up being something deeper. Um, I think you mentioned like growth being the key of life, or like the purpose of life. I question what percentage of people have a growth mindset versus a static mindset. um, I think the majority of people probably have a static mindset versus a growth mindset, and they probably don't even know that. um, so I think the foundation of it is a growth, having a growth mindset, believing that we can change, evolve, and make things better than they are now. And then I mentioned like the narrative, the story that we're telling ourselves and living out consciously or unconsciously. I think that story can be examined more closely when we're triggered by a situation that's outside of our control. And for me, I thought that because of mistakes that I made when I was younger, I couldn't be who I wanted to be in the future. That was the story I was telling myself. And it took a mentor to tell me that, Parker, like, no, those mistakes qualify you for leadership. They don't disqualify you. So really understanding like processing triggers, I think, is an important part of personal development, as well as setting targets, knowing where we're going, creating a plan, creating a map. Those are all, like, I think, foundational pieces of a personal development conversation. And then from there, I think, Simon Sinek has done a lot of great work on start with why and the power of why, and why, how, what. And for people, and you mentioned mission, and how does that like play a role in business and entrepreneurship. I think getting really clear on our why is an important part of that journey, but also allowing that to change over time, like being more directionally focused versus having the perfect answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And Parker, as I mentioned, you've been in the space of entrepreneurship now for a while. So I'm waiting with bated breath for your next answer to this question, my friend. And I'm curious to know from your perspective, what's the most surprising or impactful lesson that you've learned about the way to do business since you've been in it, my friend? What would be your answer there?
Yeah, I don't know if I could have one answer to that, but I think the one that's most top of mind for me right now is, school teaches us to get 100% on things, or to strive for perfection, to strive for that A or whatever, right? And I think entrepreneurship is around building a different relationship with, failure or challenges, and to use those failures and challenges to improve our level of success. The greatest salespeople in the world have a 30% conversion rate. So they fail 70% of the time. On a grade, that would be an F, right? The greatest baseball players in the world bat 300 over their lifetime, and that gets them into the Hall of Fame. And so I think people that have higher level rewards and opportunities and impact on the world often have a different relationship with rejection, failure, and challenges than people that really seek to be perfect.
Yeah, and Parker, I'm curious to ask you from a personal perspective. What's your motto when it comes to prosperity and your life motto? Is there something that you live by as sort of a grounding principle in your own life?
Well, I mentioned like the saddest thing in life is wasted talent, and that thing that drives me. The only other thing that comes to mind is a quote that really impacted my life, which was, life is not a problem to be solved, but an adventure to be lived. And breaking that frame of looking at everything as a problem and trying to solve it versus experiencing the journey and living that journey and making it an adventure, has improved the quality of my life. And I think I've had more experiences as a result of it, and those experiences have created a lot of evolution and growth for me personally and professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. And Parker, you mentioned you're joining me internationally today, my friend, and I'm curious. I know that you're interested in international and long-term travel. So, tell me about living that sort of exhilarating life. And I know that you're married. So, tell me, how has your adventure from a travel perspective also strengthened your marriage as well? Because it's a partnership when you want to do long-term travel, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I have been my own worst enemy in life, and specifically my reactions to situations causes more problems than the actual situation itself.
Fair enough.
And so, this adventure has really helped me to react less, to realize most things don't matter, to react less to those things, and thus create less problems for myself, so I can stay focused on, the things that are important to me.
Absolutely. And, since you brought it up, so what do you qualify as our greatest life adventure? And why do you think people should really maximize the potential of their life?
I think that's different for different people. I'm just letting my next call know that I'm running a few minutes late.
Yeah, we're
Um,
almost done, I promise. Well,
yeah, no, it's okay. Um, Greatest life adventure. I'll give you three. I think our relationship with ourselves is a really important adventure. Um, for me, learning to communicate with that person as if they were my best friend, learning to communicate with myself as if I was my best friend versus my biggest enemy, is something I'm continuing to grow with. Health is very foundational to me. It's something I spend time on every day. Is working to improve my health and be healthy. And I think that's an adventure. And then, for me, I'm married. I have a significant other, and that that journey of us getting to know each other and continuing to win her heart, is another adventure. And then the bonus fourth one, is, I think it's ties to the first one of like getting to know ourselves, is living out that mission. And that can take that can take the journey of entrepreneurship, that can take the journey of working within a company that's also solving that mission, that can be politics or nonprofit. Like, I don't think there's any one way that has to look, but learning to, make the world better in a way that is authentic to us.
yeah, absolutely. And, Parker, my final question for you today has to do with your own personal and professional legacy and how you want your legacy to be defined.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It's a cool question. I'm really in the game, or like I said, like, unlocking human potential is how I describe my mission and my company's mission. And I think that is the game that the education system is meant to play, is unlocking potential for individuals. So one of the people that I look up to in history, his name was William Wilberforce. He was in the Parliament in England, and he was the guy that was responsible for abolishing the slave trade in England. And he said something I'll never forget is that, his mission, his legacy that he chose was abolishing slavery and the reformation of society, which is a crazy mission, right? And he was able to do it over 2 to 3 decades with a mastermind that supported it. So I'd like to revolutionize education, which I think would really be a catalyst for a lot of improvement in society. And I'd also like to shift the balance of power to create more of a sustainable abundance and a quality of life for human beings versus I see a lot of short-sightedness in the current system.
Yeah, absolutely. And Parker, finally tell me if people want to get connected with you, buddy, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah. So Kevin, I'm pretty active on social media. My handle is Zachary Parker Harris. That's my full name, no spaces. So Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, you can find me there and feel free to message me.
Fantastic. Well, Parker, I really enjoyed our conversation about entrepreneurship, life, and everything in between, my friend. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me today.
My pleasure, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate your questions and best of luck to you with your journey. Let me know if I could be of any support.